Welcome to Manage to Engage, the podcast from clearandopen.com, dedicated to the evolution of you because businesses grow when people do. Serving leaders, managers, and people who will be, helping you reach excellence in your work and achieve your personal goals at the same time. Sign up for the free course at clearandopen.com. Because if I tell you the Magna Carta was signed in 1215, and then I say, hey, when was the Magna Carta signed? In that same kind of dynamic, when you see something about yourself, we unconsciously think that we've actually learned what there is to learn about that, when all we've really done is gained a little piece of knowledge about it. Hi, it's Joseph, and thanks for tuning in to Manage to Engage, the podcast from clearandopen.com. In the last episode, we established that learning is not just about memorizing knowledge. It's also about developing new skills and achieving greater awareness. And this kind of learning, this personal development, is much more effective at preparing us to navigate life's challenges. But over the last few decades, personal development has pretty much become mainstream, and as a result, a huge industry has grown around it. And not everything being sold by the industry actually helps you. Today, we examine these problems and how you can avoid them. I offer weekly member webcasts, online courses, and mentorship at clearandopen.com because it's my truth that with the right tools, anyone can eliminate the people, money, and time problems holding them back in business. And I share parts of these webcasts and courses on this show because I want to help you too. If you're enjoying the show and learning from it, I'd love your feedback. If you're listening to the show on an Apple device, all you have to do is open the podcast app, view the full description of the episode, and click the link to leave a rating and review for the show. Thanks so much for listening. Let's start the show.
Seems like when you said a minute ago, adults are walking around with this idea that there's some missing bit of information or knowledge that will, or some secret, as I think you put it, that if they do that, they would be able to do X or be more successful in some. And it seems like there is maybe such a thing, or an acceptance or an awareness of the reality that often what we lack is a willingness to, as you've said before, pay a certain price or go into an uncomfortable area. I mean, the mistakes that I make usually in what I do in my work and my business usually come in the form of having avoided some uncomfortable reality about a client or their particular characteristics of their home, or something about an employee or a subcontractor that I've been unwilling to look at and accept and deal with.
Because I know you have strong fortitude and are brave. I want to use you, Peter, to foray us into the next section of this conversation. You ready?
Sure, go ahead.
Do you know about your tendency to avoid things?
I do.
Have you learned the lesson?
I've learned pieces of it.
Yes, exactly. So this is why I'm making a sharp distinction here between memorization and learning, so that we all can hold ourselves to a higher bar. Because of our education conditioning about learning, when we know about something and can talk about it, we think we've learned something. You see? Because if I tell you the Magna Carta was signed in 1215, and then I say, hey, when was the Magna Carta signed? You say, well, I learned that it was in 1215, right? In that same kind of dynamic, when you see something about yourself, like you avoid stuff, or you're overly critical of people, or judgmental, or procrastinate, or disorganized, or run chronic overwhelm, or whatever it is, we unconsciously think that now we've learned that. That we've actually learned what there is to learn about that, when all we've really done is gained a little piece of knowledge about it, such that if someone interviewed you and said, tell me about the issues you struggle with, you would be able to pass that test. right? You'd be able to regurgitate, oh, let me tell you all about it. And, I was thinking this morning how hip personal growth has become. In the last, I don't know, I guess ever since the 50s human potential movement, changing yourself, personal growth, evolution of consciousness, however you want to describe it, it's become cooler and cooler. It's an industry now. All you got to do is look at the HABA, health and beauty section of a Whole Foods or something, right? Remember the time when there was like 2 brands of vitamins? There were 2 brands of multivitamins in the store, and that was it. Now suddenly there's a whole section, and you can take a pill for anything. All of this is because people have this hunger and desire to improve themselves, which is wonderful. It's great. I love that there's a self-improvement industry. I'm part of it. But you know what? Like most industries, most of it's full of shit. Because when something becomes cool, it attracts posers. It attracts fakers. It attracts pretenders. People who talk about it and they think that because they can talk about stuff, their own issues in general, it means they actually embody. It means they think that if they can recall words about something, that it means they've actually learned something about that. And so it's heartbreaking for me to see, I see this all around me, people with like very little work experience, very little life experience, who become coaches. Like 22-year-old kids who are like, I want to be a coach. Okay, cool. Hey, I became a coach when I was 28, and that would have been laughable, except for that I learned an entire system from E-Myth. It took 3 years to learn. I knew very little about business at that point, but they taught me stuff about that, and I learned a lot of life experience in the process. But there are many people becoming coaches these days who are just good at asking open-ended questions. And they think that that's what that is. And I'm not saying they're not helping people, because in coaching, there's the application of the lamppost phenomenon. The lamppost phenomenon is that if someone were to talk to a lamppost about what was going on with them, after about a half an hour, they would feel a whole lot better. So just by being someone that someone is talking to, that's a lot of what the work is. A lamppost doesn't have to be a particularly good listener. That's sort of the baseline. So if you can be a little bit better listener than a lamppost, you're going to be providing some value. Not necessarily a whole lot, but some. And this is good to know as a manager, because it's part of, when you're a manager, part of it is the lamppost phenomenon. If just by letting that person talk about anything they want, like a lamppost would. Think about that for a second. A lamppost may be a better listener than you are if you shut people down when they start talking about random things. A lamppost wouldn't do that. Lampposts make room, perhaps inappropriately at times, but. So the point I want to make before that interesting digression is that because personal growth, change, becoming more aware, because it's become hip, it means there's a lot of pretenders involved. And this is always the case. Whatever new system of thought there is, there's always there's always a trickle-down effect, a mainstreamification kind of thing. When every new world religion started, it started as a small group of people who were on the cutting edge of change and consciousness. Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, Protestantism. There was always some kind of revolution. No, not that mainstream thing that everybody's doing, this new thing. And then it becomes the next mainstream thing. And then someone else says, no, not that. Right? Mm-hmm. And then more and more sects and more versions of it proliferate. And, in one way, it's the messages are distilling down and getting clearer in some ways. But in other ways, they just attract more of the kind of sports fans of personal growth who like to get excited about getting excited about getting excited, like to think about change rather than actually doing it. Like how meditation is for a lot of people. A lot of people think a lot about meditation and how much they really want to be doing it. But if you really look honestly at how much they're actually sitting on the cushion, it doesn't happen quite so much. And so what I'm pointing to here is the reason for this is because of our conditioning that we think knowing about something is change, rather than being the very beginnings of change. And this is not your fault. This is education's fault, because it teaches us that a mature, intelligent individual is someone who can regurgitate information, knows about stuff rather than embodies stuff. Right? I mean, can you imagine being assigned, like, I don't know, assigned a book in some class in high school, and then being responsible not just for giving a presentation about the book, but for embodying the principles of it? Right? Read Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka and do a presentation about the short story, but also but do the presentation in a way where you generate and transmit the vibe of the story, right? Become it. Change yourself. I mean, that's what acting is in a way. That's why actors tend to be very good salespeople, because they're familiar with becoming who or what the situation calls for. Thanks for listening to Manage to Engage, the Clear and Open podcast. Join us next week when you'll be a little bit closer to who you're destined to be. Until then, know that Clear and Open is dedicated to the evolution of you, because businesses grow when people do. If you want to help the show grow, I'd appreciate you leaving a rating and review on iTunes. All you have to do is open the Apple Podcasts app, view the full description of the episode, and click the link to leave a rating and review. Or you can go to clearandopen.com/review, and it will bring you to the right place. If you're looking for more support on your journey, head over to clearandopen.com for even more tools, articles, and free resources. Thanks so much for listening. Bye for now.